H1 Guy's plagiarism video started a massive conversation about plagiarism on YouTube. However, aside from the specific creators that were called out for plagiarism, not a very big long-term impact was had on the general creator community. I think that this is because despite the impact that the video had on the conversation around creators, it didn't impact how we as an audience watch video essays or watch YouTube. And I think part of the reason for that is because it was kind of unclear what videos we should keep an eye on. Different types of videos should be and are held to very different standards. If you're watching a commentary YouTube video and they're roasting cringy TikToks and quote Karl Marx, and then forget to reference it in the description, you might forgive it. But if a video essayist does the same, you probably wouldn't. When the line between something you should hold to account and something you shouldn't is unclear, then it leaves the people who should be doing the policing to just kind of leave it and take the easy route. You can't enforce any standards if you don't know what you're enforcing. And so if we're going to have those standards for plagiarism, for example, around video essays, we kind of need to define what a video essay is. So, what counts as a video essay? In his essay, A Semantic Syntactic Approach to Film Genre, Rick Altman proposes that genres should be defined through both their semantics, the visual elements and themes, and syntax, the plot and narrative structure. For example, the semantics of an Italian-American gangster film includes the mafia, corruption, violence, Catholicism, Little Italy, and immigrant life, while its syntax includes the critique of the American dream and the celebration of the anti-hero. So now that we know how to go about defining a genre, let's first look at the genre's name. A video essay literally is an essay in a video format. An essay being an analytic, interpretive, or critical literary composition, usually much shorter and less systematic and formal than a dissertation or thesis, and usually dealing with the subjects from a limited and often personal point of view. So is that it? Is a video essay just a video talking about something in an analytical, interpretive, or critical way? Well, it shouldn't surprise you by the runtime, but I don't think so. I don't think that that definition is either broad or narrow enough to define video essays. Essays as forms of writing are defined far more by their length than their content. An essay and a thesis are two completely different genres of academic writing, but it's not really the same with videos. There isn't really a video thesis genre, it's just a longer video essay. But analysis, interpretation, and critique would only cover our semantics, so this alone would not complete our definition of the genre. Still, it's a good place to start. But now, let's look at some examples. Conspiracy by ContraPoints. ContraPoints begins their video with a skit about the paranoid nature of conspiracy, and uses a conspiracy board as a background. They begin the discussion of conspiracies by exploring conspiracy diagrams, and for the first part, just asking questions. ContraPoints has a costume changes scene, then uses JFK to show why people believe in conspiracies, before then going into how conspiracy theorists see themselves and their beliefs, and pointing out the real harm that conspiracy theorists do to set up the real point of the video, to explore the psychology of conspiracy theorists. So the video began with an intro to the video to get the audience up to a common understanding of conspiracies and the people that believe in them to begin discussing their psychology. Part 2, The Rabbit Pill, moves back to the conspiracy board with a costume change and a trippy kaleidoscope effect, and they provide a thrill-seeking, puzzle-solving model for why people would like to make up evidence for insane ideas based on loose evidence that points people to disbelieve trusted sources of information. They explore modern examples of conspiracy theories, those who peddle them, and how they try to point the audience towards conspiracy to rope them into a conspiratorial way of thinking. Part 3, Conspiracism, moves back to our setting and costume from the first chapter to explore earlier examples of conspiracy theories before setting up the structure for the rest of the chapter. They suggest that conspiracism is caused by 3 principles: intentionalism, dualism, and symbolism. They explore these principles through looking at examples of conspiracy theorists and analysing their behaviours using academic sources and calling back to previous chapters. Part 4, The Ritual, explores why conspiracy theorists seem to obsess over the supposed rituals taking place and the horrific and mysterious things that may or may not happen there. Doing so again by looking at some examples and analysing the motives of conspiracy theorists using academic sources and calling back to previous sections. Part 5, It's a Big Club and You Ain't In It, explores why people get into conspiracist thinking, similar to the first chapter. And part 6, I can't think of a section for this title, Doctor, I'm too depressed, concludes the video with the discussion of the realities of people who believe in conspiracy theories, analysing conspiracy theories to explain what conspiracism fulfills in their lives that was missing. Then finally closing the video with the discussion of people and morality, and provides an explanation for what conspiracism claims to explain. You don't even know what a Hotep is, so maybe you should shut the fuck up about it by F.D Signifier. The video begins with a conspiracy board inspired sequence to introduce the idea of Hoteps, before moving to F.D Signifier introducing the complicated nature of discussions around Hoteps. They begin their discussion of Hoteps with the story of an assassination of a Black Panther in 1969, using clips from the period and a voiceover to set up the story by describing the Black Panther movement. This allows F.D Signifier to go into some of the ideas and beliefs of Hoteps, and how the differences between their ideas and the ideas of the Black Panthers created conflict between them, leading to the eventual assassination mentioned earlier. F.D Signifier moves into talking about his role in discussing black issues, acknowledging both his own influence and the role of his audience. They then explain the modern conversation around Hoteps to explain the importance of a video definitively explaining them. F.D Signifier then interviews educators and creators to discuss modern ideas around Hoteps before moving into Part 1, What is a Hotep? They define what a Hotep is, explain broad range of people that can be called a Hotep, what can make one be called a Hotep, what prominent people think of Hoteps, and then discuss popular Hotep figures. They use the idea to both set up the idea that both Hoteps and those who disagree with them distract people from looking into ideas of black political thought, and set up Part 2, the Black Radical Tradition. They discuss the Black Radical Tradition and the ideas that make it up, explaining that while Hoteps imitate a lot of these ideas, and these ideas have inspired Hotep thought, Hoteps don't define Black Radical thought. They continue by explaining Pan-Africanism, Afrocentricity, and Afrocentrism, 3 ideas that are very easy to confuse because they're very similar and sound very similar, but they have some very big differences. They then discuss these ideas and explain where Hoteps fit in, pointing out that while Hotep ideas do come from these ideas, they have since developed their own. Part 3, Open Up Your Third Eye, explains how Hoteps developed out of black movements and groups, rather than directly out of the philosophy. They then circle back to modern Hoteps and their belief systems that lead to their often ridiculed ideas. Part 4, It's Just Us. They discuss Maulana Karenga, a major figure in the development of Hotep ideology, who they first brought up in the video's introduction, discussing their influence both on Hoteps and the larger culture, and the distance Karenga now has from modern Hoteps. They end their video by talking about how they have seen and interacted with Hoteps in their life, and talking about how they see the discussion around Hoteps now, and how the discussion around Hoteps could be healthier. Deadlock, FUNKe study by FUNKe. FUNKe, using a 3D avatar, begins the video introducing the social aspects of multiplayer games and the difficulties with playing cooperatively in a team with people you don't know, and contrasting this with single player and solo player versus player games. They introduce how communication in team-based multiplayer games is theoretically simple, being able to give complex plans and instructions while playing, which can greatly improve a team's performance in a given match, and they contrast this with the limited communication with non-player characters in single-player games. They then transition to the main topic of the video, the team-based multiplayer game Deadlock, and discuss how teammates can work together to attack, strategize, and predict enemy attacks. The game map is made of 4 lanes, forcing the team to work between all of the lanes and spread themselves effectively between them. So effective communication of the movements of both each other and enemies is incredibly important for a good team performance. They analyse the exciting movement that the game allows for, and how this affects combat before returning to their discussion of teamwork. They explain how coordinated movement of a team can dramatically change the dynamics of a match. However, many players refuse to work with their team, making the match far more difficult than it would be otherwise, and they explain how communication can affect gameplay. They end their analysis by advising the audience on how to best play Deadlock, before ending with some fun gameplay clips. The most hated sculptor you probably recognise by Solar Sands. They begin their video introducing American artist Jeff Koons with their successful artwork, followed by the thoughts of some people who hate him, and contrast this with their own more positive thoughts on the artist. They follow this by discussing Koons' early life and work, and how he began his art career. His early art made heavy use of ready-mades, which he saw through a sexual lens. Solar Sands analyses Kuhn's work and continues working through the career as they work with different materials and mediums, discussing Kuhn's way of seeing art. They discuss Kuhn as an artist, as one who comes up with great ideas rather than having any sort of great craft, with a heavy use of assistants to create his art, and also that Kuhn has a very strange way of seeing art and the everyday objects that he bases his art on. They contrast Jeff Koons with the performance artist and sculptor Paul McCarthy, who, while he sees art in a very similar way, he does so in a way that's far more profane and obscene. They end their video by going through their own thoughts on Koons as an artist. You should care about the TikTok ban even if you hate the app by Shanspeare. Shanspeare begins their video describing what happened when TikTok was banned in the US, as well as the reaction to it, and introduces the themes of the story they are about to tell. After a crime documentary inspired intro sequence and an ad read, they move into the first chapter, the rise of TikTok. They describe how TikTok moved into the West and the social media environment that it entered into, analysing the influence of the app and introducing the pushback that TikTok would receive to set up Chapter 2, TikTok versus the world. They dive into the scrutiny that TikTok has received in the American media since it came into prominence, analysing the role the app's algorithm had in making it a target. They describe how videos of certain people and from certain political perspectives were suppressed, the criticism of this, and TikTok's public response. Then also describing the issues around the app's collection of data and the public response to that, contrasting this by the lack of a response from the same people towards similar activities from American companies. They then introduce the role of influential right-wing figures in using data collection for promoting right-wing political figures and ideas before setting up the next chapter, TikTok versus the US. They describe Trump's 2020 attempt at banning TikTok as a way of introducing Trump's long-standing anti-China beliefs. They follow this by highlighting the impact of Meta in promoting the idea of TikTok as a threat due to the huge impact TikTok has had on their social media monopoly. They then highlight the competitive nature of America's relationship with China, using this to analyse and explain America's relationship with TikTok, as well as the role of the American military. They move into discussing the claims of political figures of TikTok's algorithms' supposed political bias, despite no evidence of those claims, and transitioning from this to the larger belief that social media in its entirety should be banned due to data and national security concerns. Then moving into the final chapter of the video, TikTok versus you. They analyse TikTok as an app and the relationship people have with it, discussing their own thought process through the period when TikTok was banned, as well as the potential future of the app and how people should deal with potential changes. They confront the audience with the modern realities of fascism, discussing the dependence of people on TikTok and social media, and the extent of TikTok's role in modern politics, concluding the video with the realities of how TikTok can influence politics and cause the audience to be proactive if they want change. These videos covered very different topics in very different ways and using incredibly different techniques, but we can still find some commonalities. All videos had a single host giving information to the audience. They assume very little prior knowledge and give a history of the subject, more similar to longer forms of writing than essays. All of them conclude with their own thoughts, and most of them advise the audience on how to go about the subject in the future. They all shared the themes of exploration and education and the narrative of teaching an audience. Some of them were about explaining lesser known topics or challenging common beliefs, for example the Hotep's video. Some of them used voiceover and clips and images of the topic, and some of them had academic sources. So, for our definition, we have the semantic elements of analysis, interpretation, critique, a single host, subject history, academic sources, exploration, education, advice, and a personal perspective. And we also have the syntax of teaching an audience, exploring lesser known topics, and challenging common beliefs. Not to say that every video has to include all of these to count as a video essay, but the more it includes, the neater it fits. Not every rom-com has to have a meet cute, but you know, it helps. Not every piece is going to fit into a genre exactly. We need to recognise that not all genre films relate to the genre in the same way or to the same extent, and genres will change and adapt over time. Take the development of the science fiction film. At first defined only by a relatively stable development of the science fiction semantics established by the horror film, only to move in recent years increasingly towards the syntax of the Western. The science fiction genre came out of the Gothic movement and, well, more specifically Frankenstein, so the first science fiction narratives were very much connected with horror, but the genre adapted over time so that by the time of Altman's writing, many science fiction stories, more specifically Star Wars, began to be more similar to westerns. Genres are very murky, and this can make it very difficult to categorize them, especially when a work can be as many genres as it can justify being. In The Big Lebowski, Jeffrey the Dude Lebowski gets roped into a criminal underworld in a case of mistaken identity. He helps a woman, Maud, who is involved in said criminal underworld, get pregnant as she wants to have a child without having to deal with an involved father. And the dude also deals with the death of a bowling buddy, Donnie, alongside his Vietnam vet friend, Walter. The Big Lebowski borrows elements of many genres, but the Coens utilised 3 genres most rigorously in Lebowski: the detective, the war, and the queer genre. The film adopts the detective genre most directly. The dude's story follows the detective plot very closely, the crime being the debt owed to Jackie Treehorn, one of whose henchmen pisses on the dude's rug, prompting him to investigate what's going on, if only to get somebody to pay for a new rug. The ensemble of characters matches the standard set of players as well, the dude being the detective, Walter his sidekick, and Bunny Lebowski and Maud fulfilling the roles of the femme fatale, as well as a host of suspects, including little Larry Sellers and Bunny's group of nihilist friends. The Big Lebowski also works within the war genre. Walter's demands that people follow the rules, along with his divorce, fit the character of a returning soldier. When Donnie collapses from a heart attack in the bowling alley car park, Walter tries to comfort Donnie, making references to his time in Vietnam. Call the medics. We got help choppering in. Later, Walter and the dude have a funeral for Donnie, and Walter provides a eulogy relating their recent loss to his time in Vietnam. They scatter Donnie's ashes in the Pacific Ocean, only for wind to blow the ashes into the dude's face, frustrating the dude enough to berate Walter for his eulogy. Walter's mind is still in Vietnam, still on the other side of the Pacific Ocean, so when Walter bear hugs his friends, as if his life depended on it, to some extent, his life does depend on that embrace. The Big Lebowski also fits the queer genre through the film's steady critique of marriage as a working relationship, workable institution, or as a necessary arrangement for childbearing. The dude isn't married and shows no ambition in finding a relationship to become married, and the marriages that we do see in the film don't really seem worth aspiring to. The Jeffrey Lebowski that the dude is mistaken for, the Big Lebowski, is a widower and is now married to a trophy wife, and their mess of a marriage set off the plot of the film. Walter's marriage and divorce acts as another point in the film's argument against marriage, as he is now left babysitting his ex-wife's show dog. The film's most significant argument against marriage, however, is Maud's pursuit of a sperm donor. Maud, being more than capable of having a child without a partner, removes the argument for marriage for the sake of practicality. The Big Lebowski fits very neatly into 3 very distinct genres, and so, just like The Big Lebowski and film more broadly, YouTube videos are more than capable of fitting into multiple genres. Video essays that cover a single topic can very easily fall into the category of review videos, and often vice versa. A video essay isn't limited to making academic arguments about how we read something, but also for an opinion, and that can make it also lead into becoming a review. That doesn't make it any less of a video essay, it's just also a review. The genre of a particular work isn't a single point on a map of genres with hard boundaries, but a vast area that the work moves between from moment to moment, with genres with loose, overlapping boundaries. Genres themselves aren't completely stable, and they can adapt and change over time. By the 1950s, the genres that had defined the film landscape stopped being applicable to the time period that the films were being made in, and this continued through the 60s and 70s with the growing civil rights movement and the Vietnam War. So many genres changed drastically, some through semantics and some through syntax. YouTube video genres will do the same. The topics that video essays cover are never consistent, but maybe video essays will change through a greater influence from certain other fields. Video essays currently have a lot of influence from philosophy, from YouTube channels such as PhilosophyTube and ContraPoints, but maybe in the future video essayists will take a lot more influence from history, and maybe in the future video essays will be influenced more by content creators outside North America and take a far less US-centric approach. Maybe some foreign language creators translate their works into English, and YouTube creators take inspiration. So genres, and thereby video essays, are complicated and ever-changing, So how do we go about challenging shitty video essayists? I watched a video from Ethan May, YouTubers are still plagiarising, where Ethan discusses a creator, Rocket Riley, who for years has been stealing, often, entire videos from other creators, stealing millions of views and likely thousands of dollars of other creators, getting away with it through viewers who don't care enough, and deleting the comments of those who do, escaping almost all criticism. You can report a video for copyright violations, but, you know, only if you're the original creator and they actually take part of your work. But you can't claim a video for stealing an idea, even if they're recreating it word for word. So what can we really do? Well, whenever you watch a video, you should watch for plagiarism, but you should be extra vigilant for plagiarism while watching video essays, as video essays are an environment where plagiarism can thrive if left unchecked, and can do a lot of harm along the way. Not that plagiarism isn't harmful in other areas, but as a community of video essay viewers, we are responsible to keep this space safe from plagiarism. And now that hopefully we have a better idea of what a video essay is, we know which videos we should keep an eye on. An issue that Ethan May brings up is that creators can put a filter on the comment section for words such as stolen or plagiarize, and so comments calling out a creator can be filtered out and they can still be deleted if they get through. But you can still try to leave a comment calling out the creator, and if you dislike the video, and click the do not recommend channel after the 3 little dots after the video title. Or if you're really passionate, you can create your own video calling out the creator like Ethan May did or H1 guy before him. There are steps that we can take to police and discourage plagiarism on YouTube. But with that, thank you for watching the video until the end, and I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe if you could. My last video was about apocalypses and what humanity will leave behind after them. I would tease my next video, but I don't really know what it's about yet. I think I'm going to do it about Community, but I haven't, the sitcom, but I don't know what yet. But make no mistake, I will be back here in a month or so for another video, and I will hope to see you again.